Hi, this is Julie. This is the last video in the series on exponential rules, and the last rule that we're going to look at is the rule for negative exponents. So, as an example here, if I have something like x to the negative n, so I have a negative number that's in the exponent of an exponential form number, the rule is that we are going to take the reciprocal of that number. So what I'm going to do is keep the same base and make the exponent positive, but put that in the denominator of a fraction underneath a numerator of 1. So x to the negative n is going to be equal to 1 over x to the n. So let's look at a couple of other examples of how that might work. So here's another example, 2 to the negative 1 power. If I use the general rule here, I'm going to take the reciprocal and put 1 over 2 to the first power. Well, 2 to the first power is just 2, so this fraction would be equal to 1/2. So 2 to the negative 1 power is the same thing as 1/2. Here's a second example. I've got v to the negative 5th power. So using the same reasoning, I'm going to put 1 over v to the 5th, make that 5 positive, and then that's really all that I can do with that problem as far as simplifying it goes. Here's another example. This one's a little bit different. This time I have 2x to the negative 1 over y. So a couple things I need to think about here. One is that the exponent here, the negative 1, is only on the x. It doesn't have anything to do with the 2 that's out in front of the x. That 2 is just a coefficient on the x right there. And so I'm going to leave 2 in the numerator of that fraction. That x to the negative 1, I'm going to make x to the first power, and I don't really need to write the 1 when it's just x to the positive 1 power. I'm going to move that down into the denominator of that fraction. And then there's really nothing I need to do with the y either. The y can just stay the way it is, and it's going to remain in the denominator of that fraction as well. So I would simplify 2x to the negative 1 over y as 2 over x times y. And one last example here, kind of similar reasoning, but we're starting off with a problem that looks just a little bit different. This time the negative exponent starts off in the denominator. So the numerator of my fraction here is going to stay the same. I've got 3x squared. I don't need to do anything with that. And with the z to the negative 3, it's in the denominator, so I'm not going to move it to the denominator. If I were to take the reciprocal of that or flip it over, it's actually going to move up into the numerator and become positive. So what I'm going to end up with is 3x squared z to the third power, and then really that'll all be over 1, but because it's a fraction over 1, I can just write this as a whole number and say that this is 3x squared z to the third power. Oops. Look a little bit better there. So that is how negative exponents work. Thanks for watching this series of videos on rules for exponents, and tune in again later.